Hello and welcome to our presentation today. We are Gunnar, Tijn, Sylvia and Aniek, and today we will talk to you about our project Homes for Poland. This is a project about how sustainable buildings can pave the way for the achievement of SDG 3, 11 and 13 in the context of Poland. First, I will talk about the SDGs in a global context in relation with sustainable buildings. Then, some general information about the national level concerning Poland and the state of the SDGs will be given, closing with the pathways to achieve our vision of a sustainable Poland in terms of buildings and possible scenarios that can form a challenge. To start with the SDGs concerning our project and our relation with sustainable buildings. First, to explain a bit about sustainable buildings, the goal of sustainable construction is to reduce the impact that construction has on the environment and on the health and well-being of people in cities. Therefore, it aligns perfectly with SDG 3, good health and well-being. And since there are many buildings in the city, SDG 11, about sustainable cities and communities, is closely connected as well. Lastly, SDG 13, take urgent action to combat climate change, is also an important SDG, since the faster buildings become more sustainable, the better it is. Okay, moving on to our vision. In this 3 horizons framework you see here, our vision in a nutshell can be seen. As you can see, for example, we believe that current energy insufficient buildings should vanish together with climate unadaptable building techniques. On the opposite side, however, in a sustainable future where the current niches are dominant, we want climate adapted buildings along with the close connection of humans to nature. We think that spreading knowledge, subsidies and citizens' involvement are key to our transition. Now we will talk about the national level concerning Poland. Poland is a country in Central Europe with 3,796 million inhabitants. After the fall of the communism, Poland has experienced significant economic growth and now pursues high living standards as a top priority. By taking into account all the 17 different SDGs in the context of Poland, we can see Poland being on the right path towards a sustainable future. Nevertheless, some improvements could still be made. Zooming in on SDG 3, which is concerning good health and well-being. Poland is scoring below EU average and there are multiple facets in the current healthcare system that fall short, which is predominantly caused by the substandard financing on the healthcare system by the government. This has led to a shortage of health professionals along with relatively weak primary care. When we talk about SDG 11, sustainable cities and communities, we can characterize Poland's cities as well-developed and polycentric urban networks. 60% of the Polish population find its residence in urban areas, where 80% of the GDP is concentrated. The country cities have undergone significant changes due to the change in political system and rapid urbanization over the past 20 years. For SDG 13, climate action, we can conclude that Poland since the base year 1988 reduced its greenhouse gas emissions by 30% and simultaneously increased its GDP by roughly 220%. In other words, Poland has met the requirements of the third commitment period of Kyoto Protocol, which was established in 1977. Besides, Poland was one of the leading figures in the ratification of the Paris Agreement in 2015. This also led to more environmental consciousness under citizens and the implementation of new innovations and technologies over the past couple of years. Now we will focus on the seeds which we selected and believe could contribute to an increasingly sustainable Poland. These are kinetic building, vertical farming, building with plants and building on water. We looked into the seeds from a global and national perspective and I will briefly give an overview. So, starting with kinetic buildings, which can help to develop more energy efficient buildings and could improve the well-being of its occupants. This is done by rotating and adapting elements of the building's facades during winter. Then, building with plants is a seeded initiative which integrates green roofs and plants into building structure. Since Poland struggles with air pollution, capturing pollutants and trapping CO2 through photosynthesis could lead to an improvement of the air quality. Next, vertical farming reduces the time, effort and emissions involving in the food transportation network, which is very important given society's reliance on the food supply chain. This in combination with uncertainties around climate change makes vertical farming the solution to produce a vast amount of food in relatively small indoor areas. And lastly, building on water, the IBA-DOC is a seed initiative in which buildings adapt to the increasing water level. Since extreme weather events like floods will occur more frequently in Poland, it is important to have adaptive building, of which IBA-DOC is an example.
The seeds presented in the global vision will be combined to create two different pathways. The first pathway is a blue and green city. A blue and green city is a civilized urban area that creates a nature-oriented urban system which successfully incorporates vegetation and water bodies with other natural processes. The aim is to provide ecological value associated by restoring the connection between city, water and nature. These environmental adaptive buildings are adapted to their current and future environment and have the capability to respond to the site. A blue and green city, among others, supports urban biodiversity, reduces the impact of flooding and improves the air quality. This transformation requires both commitment and creativity of people, businesses and urban development professionals who live and work in the city, as well as the rise of new corporations between municipalities, regional and national governments. Both the seeds building with plants and vertical farming are fundamental for the development of a blue and green city. The first stimulates the reconnection of cities' inhabitants with nature, mitigates the adverse effects of air pollution in Polish cities, improves people's health and increases social interaction and inclusiveness. The latter raises awareness on the origin of food and stimulates sustainability community practices, which indirectly leads to better diets and a local food system which decreases the impact on the environment. The second pathway is the smart and efficient city. This pathway imagines digital and telecommunication technologies used for the benefits of the city's inhabitants and environment and redesigned networks and services in an efficient and productive way. A smart and efficient city entails, among others, safe public spaces, efficient ways of lighting and heating of buildings. This pathway is closely related to climate adaptation and resilience, since without taking into consideration these two topics, it is difficult to imagine a future smart city. To create this pathway, a high degree of technological implementation and a predominant top-down approach will be required. Thus, governmental bodies will be the main actor to start a transition with huge financial investments. However, once governmental bodies succeed in creating interest in the topic, community support will be an essential component of the transformation. Both the seed initiatives Kinetic Building and Building on Water appropriately fit into the transformation towards a smart and efficient city. Whereas Kinetic Building could contribute to buildings' energy efficiency and improve human well-being through the capabilities to adapt to the surrounding environment, Building on Water primarily focuses on buildings' resilience and the capability to adapt to further challenges concerning the threat of frequent floods and generating renewable energy through smart and efficient ways. Improving a city's efficiency next to incorporating nature into city's design might be challenging. However, if a balance between the two pathways emerges, one can sketch the future of Polish cities in the case the combination of the concerning pathways come to fruition. So what materials, competences and meanings are required for people to live in these two pathways? The most visible change will be in the way buildings look. There will be a combination of natural elements with efficient design inspired by nature. All this will be connected through technological management. An interdisciplinary approach between urban architects, sustainable development experts and ecologists will be crucial for the implementation of a blue-green city. On the other hand, high-performance technologies require nearly thought skills from municipalities, engineers, urban developers, architects, ecologists, experts on renewable energy transition, and, of course, the local communities. Finally, the social perception and importance of sustainability will become the paradigm around which everything turns. People will become aware of their own health and well-being, value the current state of the environment, its ecosystem services, but also envision technology as a tool to manage the city and its surroundings. Now, we will briefly discuss how we envision the transformation to happen. That is, what do we think the supporting conditions for the seeds to take over the dominant system are, and how to deal with resistance to change. One important matter for both pathways will be creating awareness about why we need to change and why change towards a more sustainable planet can start from our buildings. The media can play an important role in this phase by spreading news. Concerning the blue and green city, the role of constructing businesses and governments will be key in this transformation. Businesses can set a new paradigm of sustainable practices and standards. Governments can provide subsidies, incentives, and funding for sustainable buildings. In the smart and efficient city, the government can act as a role model by implementing technological solutions first. Moreover, it will be crucial to divide responsibilities and create a new comprehensive view of cities with all stakeholders. Moving on, we have developed a few controversial scenarios that might change the way we look at the human activity sustainable construction of buildings. We try to imagine what might happen if Poland would quit Europe and all international agreements to instead focus on space mass migration of its inhabitants. If Earth will not be the only livable planet, could Poland stick to the status quo or even exploit its resources such as coal? Will there be political conflicts among different visions of Earth? Would only the rich be allowed to reach another planet and save themselves from the tremendous consequences of disregard towards sustainability? And what if pandemics like COVID-19 or even deadlier would continuously emerge and the government will take on a digital totalitarian approach to prevent deaths? Climate change will not be the main focus of political action again. Instead, smart buildings, the Internet of Buildings, and digital surveillance will monitor human behavior constantly, limiting human freedom even more. Or what if instead of high technological control from the government side, hackers will take over smart cities? Unexpected variables might attend Poland and the world, but we can still try to shape the future as we wish. Thank you for listening.